ich allein bin. Gedanken sich im Gras drehen, aber niemand so wie du. Diese Liebe, die braucht Luft, vielleicht muss ich das halt ansehen. Back in the day, 7 AM, liebten uns im Blut. Dazu sagen Erika, aber du kann all deine Tattoos, ja. Schon gut, ich gebe es zu, aus dem Funken wurde Feuer, aus dem Feuer wurde Blut. Als ich leugnen, dieses Feuer war zu gut. Hältst mich wach, drückst mich 1000-mal auf Snooze. Alter, schenk mir Booze, in meinen Juice, im Schädel nur noch Mus. Ertrink in meinem Blues, Blues, Blues. Und du schaust dabei zu. Check im erst, wie traurig du mich machst, wenn ich allein bin. Gedanken sich im Kreis drehen, aber niemand so wie du. Diese Liebe, die braucht Luft, vielleicht muss ich das halt ansehen. Check im erst, wie traurig du mich machst, wenn ich allein bin. Gedanken sich im Kreis drehen, aber niemand so wie du. Aber niemand so wie du. Wolltest einfach weg von hier, wolltest niemals Zeit verlieren. Zu lang mit dem Herz jongliert, ungesund. Die Art und Weise, wie ich damit umgehe, schwör, wie es mich langsam umbringt. Sehnsucht auf dem Display, kein Happy End, kein Disney, Disney. Oh, oh, Alter, was ist los? Dachte mir, wir sitzen gemeinsam in diesem Boot. Ich schwör, ich komm mir vor wie in einer dieser Shows. Ich glaub, ich bin in Not, Emotion Overdose. Mach mich zum Fool, mach mich zum Fool für dich und mich. Es wird zu fühlen, doch ich will mich um. Check im erst, wie traurig du mich machst, wenn ich allein bin. Gedanken sich im Gras drehen, aber niemand so wie du. Diese Liebe, die braucht Luft, vielleicht muss ich das halt ansehen. Check im erst, wie traurig du mich machst, wenn ich allein bin. Gedanken sich im Gras drehen, aber niemand so wie du. Aber niemand so wie
Hi guys, I hope you can hear me. I really do hope you can hear me because there's nobody there and I'm recording and I want to read something, so I'm not gonna mess around too much. I'm gonna start reading so this recording won't be too long. I decided I was gonna start reading a book and I thought it would be much more fun to stream it, because I'd like to just share it. And it's a pretty long book. It's got over 700 pages, so it's going to be like different. It's going to be different parts. I mean, I'll try to record these and upload them to YouTube so they can eventually be re-listened to. Yeah. So I'm gonna get started here. I picked a book that I've been wanting to reread. I read some of it a couple of years ago, and I thought it'd be a good time to reread it. It's Occult Theocrasy by Lady Queensborough, Edith Starr Miller, and I think it's from the 20s. It's from the 20s. Maybe I should read the foreword also. I'm gonna, let me put the window up so you could see the book. I'm not gonna show my face because I have my cooler on since my computer started overheating again. I hope it works. So I hope you enjoy this as much as I do. The foreword. This book makes no claim to literary merit. It is simply a work of research and documentation, giving evidence and facts which I trust will help the reader in drawing his own conclusions. In the course of my researches as an international political investigator into the causes of social unrest, I have probed the depths of infamy which now surrounds not ours only, but also the next generation, whose right to lead a decent life should be as good as was ours. As a woman of the world, I have witnessed things, the existence of which I did not suspect, and I have realized that, due to my protected position in life, they should never have been expected to have come to my knowledge. Let me tell every woman, however much protected, whether dairymaid or duchess, that the safeguards which she imagines to be thrown around herself are but a mirage of the past. Her own and her children's future are at the mercy of those forces, the activities of which have been my business. Oh, I'm doing this online, so sorry about the commentary that I'm going to be giving. Yeah, I'm going to be doing this a little bit different. I'm going to give a commentary to this mother, because the problem is I can't help myself. Let me continue. Her own and her children's future are at the mercy of those forces, the activities of which it has been my business for the last 10 years to follow as one of a group of investigators. Today, most of the good people are afraid to be good. They strive to be broad-minded and tolerant. It is fashionable to be tolerant, but mostly tolerant of evil, and this new code has reached the proportions of demanding intolerance of good. The wall of resistance to evil has thus been broken down, and no longer affords protection to those who, persecuted by evildoers, stand in need of it. Worse still, there are cases wherein virtuous people's good name is relentlessly filched from them, but no effort will be made by the presumed good people to rally to their defense. Happy are they if they themselves can discover the cause of their ruin, material or moral, either partial or total. In offering this book to the public, I have endeavored to expose some of the means and methods used by the secret world, one might almost say an underworld, to penetrate, dominate, and destroy not only the so-called upper classes, but also the better portion of all classes. There are those who feel confident that if they refrain from joining in any society or group and avoid entanglements, no harm can befall them. To such, let me say that situations can be and are created for innocent dupes every day, and wrecked homes are the direct result. Neither fortune nor blameless life led, as it were, in an island of strict virtue, in the midst of tumultuous sea of evil, spells security. Irrefutable evidence of a particular example of underworld tyranny has come into my possession. The victim's guilt was her reluctance to step from virtue into the mire of evil which surrounded her. Moreover, she was intolerant of evil and sought to oppose and destroy it. The case of her persecution at the hands of her foes is complete. She belonged to what is termed society, as did also some of the other actors in this bewildering drama. The world, social, financial, legal, and shall we say also the underworld, leaving to this word is generally accepted literal meaning, knows them. So many Jekylls and Hydes stalk about unsuspectingly in our midst. From such an example, I have been led to the conclusion that, among others, 3 factors can help one from being completely destroyed by the combined forces of that underworld: a flawless life, independent means, and real friends, all 3 of which must be backed by a fearless determination to fight evil on all points of the Masonic compass. In these days, when apparently vice triumphs and virtue must be penalized, it may well for all of us to fight the undertow by which our children may be dragged under and must of necessity perish. Vice rings and secret societies form but one vortex into which youth has drawn and destroyed, whilst the good people, in quotations, because of their ignorance, look on helplessly in despair. It is for their instruction that this book has been written. Its compilation has taken several years, and, had it not been for the generous efforts of one of my friends, Madame de Shishmaref, and of several other persons, I would never have been able to complete the task which I set out to accomplish. What must concern us all now is the protection of our decency, in other words, equal rights, for such as are not vice adepts. This book is not complete. It will never be complete. but for the present it must remain as a study of the root conditions which have led to present-day subversive upheavals and overthrow of the principles of Christian civilization. Edith Queensborough. That was the foreword. There's about 20, many chapters. Let's put it that way. I'm not going to read all of them. Let me scroll down here. Occult Theocrasy, Part 1. My final work is a word of warning to American women. Keep away from the swamis, the yogis, the traveling teaching men. You would need no such bidding if, for an instant, you guessed the truth. In your good faith, in your eager-minded receptivity of high-sounding doctrine, in your hunger for color, romance, glamour, and dreams come true, you expose yourself, all unsuspecting, to things that, if you knew them, would kill you dead with unmerited shame. Catherine Mayo, and Why I Wrote Mother India. The Mysteries of Freemasonry, Chapter 1. The Religion of the Secret. Man is a creature of mind and matter. To the realm of mind belongs metaphysical thought, which, whether trained or untrained, is peculiar to each individual and is subject for its development or restraint to his will. It is the basis of religion, and in the generally accepted sense of the word, it is purely spiritual and can reach the height of mysticism. From it issue creeds or doctrines and the erection of theological system of beliefs. Imparted to other individuals and accepted by them, the metaphysical thought of a few great minds has become the basis of religious systems. Upon its teaching was grafted a ritual or law, disciplining the life, mystic, moral, social, and even physical, of its adherents or believers. From the exercise of such laws, theocracy, or the rule of priesthood, was evolved. It is to be found in every religion, regardless of the fact that in some instances, like in the Buddhist doctrine of the Gautama and in the teaching of Jesus Christ, nothing is further removed than ritualism from the metaphysical thought or religious conception of the founders. I have to turn off my cooler for a second. The power of theocracy, or exercise of government rule over the masses by a hierarchy of priests or adepts, rested on its dual system of teaching, namely exotericism and esotericism, the former a code of discipline of the thought and mode of life of the masses, the latter the hierarchic school wherein were trained the chosen adepts destined to safeguard the rules imposed upon the people by the high priests. Upon a close study of the manifold religious systems, the corruption of which led to theocratic rule, namely Brahmanism, the ancient Egyptian cult, Mosaism or Judaism, Christianism, and Mohammedanism. Whoa. One finds the accepted belief of monotheism as the basis of esoteric or secret belief or doctrine. Monotheism is here taken in the sense of the first principle, whereas the Egyptian high priesthood of Memphis kept this theory as the esoteric teaching of the high adepts. Moses, brought up as one of them, gave it as exoteric or popular belief to the Israelite sect to which he belonged, embodying it in a deity, the terrible Jehovah of the Jews. Another side of the esoteric teaching was that of occultism, the development of all human psychic forces, which, when misused, led to the practice of magic. The esoteric part of all religions and Hermeticism, the teaching and practice of occultism, led to the development of what might be termed the religion of the secret, which eventually overshadowed and helped to disseminate subversive activities. It is with this that we are chiefly concerned and will endeavor, to some degree, to show its baneful influence on society of all creeds and nations. Let the reader bear in mind that this is not the object of this work to discuss the place occupied and the part played by either metaphysics and philosophy on the one hand, and science and ritualism on the other, the limitations of each and its encroachment upon the territory of the others. The ensuing conflicts are matter for the history of fanaticism throughout the ages. Our aim is to follow the outgrowth of esotericism and a few of its multiple ramifications in the realm of perversion and subversion. Chapter 2. I need to take a drink. Okay. Onward we go. Chapter 2. The meaning of occultism. A summary and explanation of the principal forms of occultism must precede the chapters which deal with the historical side of the subject, and the objections, those of the credulous as well as those of the skeptics, must be foreseen and forestalled. Many persons are tempted to deny, arbitrarily and without examination, statements on matters of which they have no previous knowledge, but even the possible criticism of such as these must be received due consideration. In this age of wireless and airplanes, I'm sorry, it's so funny, of wireless and airplanes, my goodness, this could have been written 2020. Okay, sorry, I'll continue. In this age of wireless and airplanes, one of the fads of the modern highbrow is to scoff at such things as sorcerers, magic, and evocations as old wives' tales, tales of ancient history. There are people who refuse to believe in the existence of the supernatural, perhaps we should say supernormal, even when confronted with the evidence. Such are the skeptics who deny everything. Hidebound in their prejudice, they ignore the fact that magic, white or black, has now as many adepts as ever, nor can they distinguish between the different schools of spiritism. First, there are the charlatans whose tricks in the line of spiritism are generally sooner or later unmasked. Second, there are the occultists who operate in secrecy and hide their meetings from all but initiates with the greatest care. Many persons are duped by charlatans, so the skeptics persuade themselves of the absolute non-existence of all diabolical practices in modern times. They are wrong, for occultism flourishes now in Europe, Asia, and America. The Black Mass is said today in Paris and London, and Satanism has its faithful followers. On this subject, one of the most eminent writers was Karl Haxey, who, under the pseudonym of Dr. Bataille, made an extensive study of occultism and gave his extremely exaggerated views of it in the book Le Diable au... Oh, I'm so sorry, I can't read that. It's like the 14th cycle. It's French. I'm so sorry. The following pages of this chapter are mostly either quotations or abridgments of that work. According to the teaching of the Christian churches, God allows demons certain limited powers, but they are not permitted to open the gates of hell and release a spirit at the request of one who evokes the dead. The dead, even damned, will not show themselves if evoked, nor would evocations be answered by those who had succeeded in attaining the kingdom of heaven. But devils can, and do, says the Church, substitute themselves for the deceased. They will impersonate a dead person whose appearance is demanded by invocations. I have to stop here for a second and say, yeah, be careful, be careful the demons you call, right? Isn't that always said? Okay. It is also admitted that the fallen angels or spirits will often manifest to people without being called. The theological hagiographa cite, oh gosh, I am butchering this thing here, many cases of diabolical apparitions to saints' apparitions, which these saints have been able to repel and conquer. But what skeptics and agnostic Christians alike ignore is that besides the drawing room mediums and mediums for diversion, There are occultists whose vile practices are veiled in the profoundest mystery. These men, whose moral sense is absolutely perverted, believe in Lucifer, but they will believe him to be equal of God and worship him secretly. Modern occultism is on the one hand practical Kabbalah and on the other Indian yogism, both of which have always had their adepts more or less openly. The Kabbalah is occult science itself. It is the secret theology of the initiates, theology essentially satanic. In a word, the counter-theology. Our God, the God of the Christians, is the power of evil in the eyes of the Kabbalists, and for them the power of good, the real God, is Lucifer. The Kabbalah teaches magic, or the art of intercourse with spirits and supernatural beings. One cannot be a convinced Kabbalist without soon becoming a magician and devoting oneself to the practice of occultism. Not that our Kabbalists or contemporary magicians practice all the different branches of occultism. Some of these have abandoned, and others are only used by charlatans for the exploitation of superstitious persons. But a great many, precisely the most criminal and perverse, are observed in the hidden dens of our modern Luciferians. Magic has two divisions. The first is divining magic, subdivided into several branches of which the principal are astrology, palmistry, anthropomancy, I don't even know how to pronounce that, one-irocritics, aeromancy, hydromancy, pyromancy, and cartomancy. Wow. All right. The second is operative magic, also subdivided into several branches, of which the principal are alchemy, mesmerism, necromancy, theurgy, various miraculous feats. There are moreover some superstitious practices not specially classed, but Theil thus defines some of the foregoing. Astrology, divining the future by the stars, the casting of horoscopes is its most prevalent practice. Palmistry, divining the future by the hand. Anthropomancy, this is one of the practices supposed at present to have fallen into disuse. It is a horrible, savage abomination and consists in disembowelling a human being for the purpose of divining the future by inspection of the entrails. Whoa. Medieval history accuses Gilles de Retz of perpetrating this crime on children, whom he lured to his castle for that purpose. Tacitus says that the Druids in ancient Britain used to consult their gods by looking into the entrails of their captives. This is the word that, sorry, I have to interrupt for a second. This is the word that I can't pronounce. One-irocritics, divining the future through interpretation of dreams. Aeromancy, divination by the study of aerial phenomena. Hydromancy, divination by the study of liquids or aquatic phenomena. Pyromancy, divination by fire. Cartomancy, divination by cards. Oh, hi Kadir. Thank you for the thumbs up. Okay, I'm going on. There is no need to expatiate further on the more or less grotesque means employed by those who follow these false sciences. One must be somewhat erratic to imagine that the future can be foretold by coffee grounds, by the antics of flames in a grate, by the order in which shuffled cards will be drawn, or by the odd shapes assumed by wind-driven clouds. When events corroborate predictions made under these conditions, it can be attributed to the use of power of clairvoyance. But these fortune-tellers, some of whom have a thorough knowledge of the rules governing the practices of these absurdities, are the first to distrust their art. Such expedients, disdained by the real occultists, are too unimportant to be worthy of note. It is quite another matter to expose the Satanists, ignored by the public, whose sects bearing different names in different countries constitute in reality only one single secret religion, whose fanatics, imbued with the spirit of evil, will sacrifice themselves blindly to their cause. Throughout the universe, all Luciferian and satanic rites bear a basic similarity. Dealing principally with the practices of contemporary operative magic, it is Batil's opinion as regards the mysterious art of alchemy. Its theory is called Hermetic science and has a double objective, namely the discovery of the philosopher's stone, a substance capable of transmuting base metals into gold and drinkable gold, or the elixir of long life, which is a magic potion endowed with the properties necessary to prolong human life indefinitely, or at least to maintain in old age the faculties of youth. Alchemy as a science seems now obsolete. The alchemist knew the existence of microbes and toxins long before the medical discoveries of the present age. The laboratories of satanic bacteriology have been working for a long time on cultures of bacilli or solutions of their toxic properties, which even when administered in infinitesimal doses, mixed with food or drink, disseminate disease and death where it is judged necessary by the masters. That life is to be destroyed. In these cases, deaths occur from apparently natural causes. He further says that magnetic mesmerism is the occult medicine of the Kabbalists. One must naturally not confuse the scientists who are at present making researches in hypnotism and suggestion in the interest of science with the emulators of Cagliostro, whose aim is to procure diversions, often wicked and immoral. Scientific magnetism is still an obscure question being studied by theologians, physiologists, and criminologists, whereas that of the adepts of magic has nothing to do with this. It is a branch of the subterranean work that is nearing its goal today. Necromancy is partly divining magic and partly operative magic. This practice consists of evocation of the spirits of the dead. Spiritism and rapping of tables are necromancy. But if all spiritists are not necessarily Kabbalists, all Kabbalists are practicing necromancy. People are far from suspecting the progress made by necromancy along these lines. Freemasonry is yearly more and more invaded by the spiritist element to the extent that in 1889 an international convention of spiritist Freemasons attended by about 500 delegates was held at the Hotel of the Grand Orient of France, Rue Cadet in Paris. This was only a beginning. Eliphas Levi, a renowned occultist of the 19th century, writing in Histoire de la Magie, in the following words sounds a warning to those who recklessly would venture into the domain of the occult. The experiences of theurgy and necromancy are always disastrous to those who indulge in them. When one has stood on the threshold of the other world, one must die, and almost invariably under terrible conditions. First giddiness, then catalepsy, followed by madness. It is true that the atmosphere is disturbed. The woodwork cracks and the doors tremble and groan in the presence of certain persons. After a series of intoxicating acts, weird sounds, sometimes bloody signs, will appear spontaneously on paper or linen. They are always the same and are classed by magicians as diabolical writings. The very sight of them induces a state of convulsion or ecstasy in the mediums who believe themselves to be seeing spirits. Thus, Satan, the spirit of evil, is transfigured for them into an angel of light. But before they will manifest, these so-called spirits require sympathetic excitement produced by sexual intercourse on the part of their devotees. Hands must be placed in hands, feet on feet. They must breathe in each other's faces. These acts often being followed by others of an obscene character. The initiates, revealing in these forms of excesses, believe themselves to be the elect of God and the arbiters of destiny. They are the successors of the fakirs of India. No warning will save them. To cure such illnesses, the priests of Greece used to terrify their patients by concentration and exaggeration of the evil in one great paroxysm. They made the adept sleep in the cave of Trophonius. After some preliminary preparations, he descended to the subterranean cavern, in which he was left without light, soon to be prostrated by intoxicating gases. Then the visionary, still in the throes of ghastly dreams, caused by incipient asphyxia, was rescued, being carried off, prophesying on his tripod. These tests gave their nervous system such a shock that the patients never dared mention evocations and phantoms again. Theurgy is the highest degree of occultism. Necromancy is limited to the summoning of dead souls, but the theurgists of the 19th century evoke entities qualified by them as genii, angels of light, exalted spirits, spirits of fire, etc. In their meetings scattered throughout the world, they worship Lucifer. The three mysterious letters, J, B, M, that the common initiates see in the Masonic temples, are reproduced in the meeting rooms of the Luciferians. But they no longer mean Jachin, Boaz, and Mahabon, as in the lodges Nor Jacques, Bouragnon, Moulet, as with the Knights Kadosh. In theurgy, these three letters mean Jesus, Bethlemitus, and Maledictus. Theurgy is therefore pure Satanism. I'm terribly sorry for butchering these words. Moreover, it is important to note that the Kabbalists, admitted to the mysteries of theurgy, never mention the word Satan. They look upon certain dissident adepts who invoke the devil under the name of Satan as heretics, whose system they call Goti or black magic. They call their own practices theurgy or white magic. Between these two types of devil worshippers, the Luciferian occultists and the Satanists, there is a difference which must not be overlooked. Luciferians never call their infernal master spirit of evil, or father and creator of crime. Albert Pike even forbade the use of the word Satan under any circumstances. There is indeed a distinction between the Satanists and Luciferians. The Satanists, described by Mr. Humans in his book La Basse, are chiefly persons mentally deranged by the use and abuse of drugs, who, suffering from a peculiar form of hysteria, accuse the God of the Christians of having betrayed the cause of humanity. They are persons who recognize that their god Satan occupies a position in the supernatural sphere, inferior to that of the Christian deity. On the other hand, the Luciferians, or the initiates of kindred rites, while still laboring under a strange delusion, act deliberately and glorify Lucifer as the principle of good. To them he is the equal of God, and to the Christians whom they describe as the principle of evil. It is necessary to recognize the distinction which exists between the Luciferians and Satanists, for their two cults bear each other no resemblance. Although Lucifer Satan manifests indiscriminately to his faithful followers of both denominations, one must not, however, imagine that the pride and satisfaction he derives from this adulation acts as an inducement to making him appear whenever he is called. Occultists of all schools agree that nothing is more capricious than the conduct of spirits when evoked. It is well, moreover, to remember that Luciferian occultism is no novelty, nor must one make the mistake of confusing it with ordinary Freemasonry, the lodges of which are only private clubs. Many authors have published books on Freemasonry, some printing the rituals, some their personal observations on certain facts, but few of these authors having themselves passed into occult masonry, the real masonry of the Kabbalistic degrees, which is in touch with all secret societies, Masonic as well as non-Masonic, have been able to state that Luciferian occultism controls Freemasonry. Though this is indeed the case, neither the president of the Council of the Order of the Grand Orient of France, the Supreme Chief of French Freemasonry, nor the President of the Supreme Council of Scottish Rites will be received at the meeting of a simple Luciferian ceremony just on account of his title and dignity, unless at the same time he possesses a diploma of Kabbalistic grade, which requires another initiation. On the other hand, the first Oddfellow from Canada, a member of the Chinese San Ho Hui of China, a Luciferian fakir from India, all these can visit at their pleasure all lodges and inner shrines of ordinary Freemasonry in all countries, because in each one of the satanic sects the directing authority is exercised by heads who belong to the most exalted Masonic degrees of the different rites, degrees which are for them of secondary importance. These chiefs, at the request of their subordinates of the Luciferian societies, deliver to them freely the diplomas necessary to obtain admittance everywhere, as well as the sacred words and yearly and half-yearly passwords of all the Masonic rites of the globe. Luciferian occultism, as has been said before, is therefore not a novelty, but it bore a different name in the early days of Christianity. It was called Gnosticism, and its founder was Simon the Magician. The Gnostics were not ordinary heretics, but constituted an anti-Christian sect. To deceive the multitude, they affected disagreement with certain doctrines of the apostles, and the chiefs selected from among the initiates those destined to receive in secret council the satanic revelation. Gnosticism is marked with the seal of Lucifer. It is contemporary with the Apostle Peter and has continued without interruption down to the present day, periodically changing its mask. The 7 founders of Freemasonry were all Gnostics. The Magi of the English Rose Croix, whose names were Théophile de Ségulier, named Chaplain of the Prince of Wales by George II, Anderson the clergyman, an Oxford graduate and preacher to the King of England, George Payne, James King, Calvert, London Madden, and Eliot. Gnosticism, as the mother of Freemasonry, has imposed its mark in the very center of the chief symbol of this association. The most conspicuous emblem which one notices on entering a Masonic temple, the one which figures on the seals, on the rituals everywhere, in fact appears in the middle of the interlaced square and compass. It is the 5-pointed star framing the letter G. Different explanations of this letter G are given to the initiates. In the lower grades, one is taught that it signifies geometry. To the brothers frequenting the lodges admitting women as members, it is revealed that the mystic letter means generation, but the revelation is attended with great secrecy. Finally, to those found worthy to penetrate into the sanctuary of the Knights Kadosh, the enigmatic letter becomes the initial of the doctrine of the perfect initiates, which is Gnosticism. This explanation is no longer an imaginary fabrication. It is Gnosticism which is the real meaning of the G in the flamboyant star, for after the grade of Kadosh, a Hebrew word meaning consecrated, the Freemasons dedicate themselves to the glorification of Gnosticism, or anti-Christianity, which is defined by Albert Pike as the soul and marrow of Freemasonry. Let us add that the ancient mysteries of Gnosticism have been known and published in the past. There is no difference between the Gnosticism of the early ages of Christianity and modern occultism. The fundamental principle of Gnosticism was the double divinity, dual principle, and this is exactly the theological theory of modern occultism. The Gnostics claimed that the good God was Lucifer and that Christ was the devil, that what the Christians call vice was for them virtue, and to the Christian dogma they opposed Gnosticism, a word meaning human knowledge. Early Gnosticism had its doctors, the Basilidians, Ophites, and Valentinians. Basilid of Alexandria, one of them, lived at the end of the 1st century. He taught metempsychosis and principles underlying present-day theosophy. His system resembles that of the spirits of the 19th century who have invented nothing, for they copy Gnosticism even in its theory of the transmigration of souls. Basilid affirmed that he was the reincarnation of Plato. Whoever has penetrated into assemblies of modern theurgists can attest that one of its current theories is that of reincarnation. After Basilid came Montanus, who died in 212. Montanus was a grand master of the art of divination. The Bite of Mizraim, a Freemasonry said to be Egyptian, copies slavishly, in its Kabbalistic grades, all the phantasmagoria of Montanus. This Gnostic doctor plunged himself into ecstasies, and according to the history, he had 2 women, Maximilia and Priscilla, trained to act as his accomplices. The Gnostics came in crowds to admire their contortions worthy of epileptics. They had the sacred illness and were considered 2 saints of Satan. In the assemblies of the sect, when they went into frenzies and prophesied, their oracular sayings were listened to with veneration by the adepts. Were they acting a part? Were they just mediums or somnambulists? Or were they what the Roman Catholics call possessed? This is a hard question to answer. A modern example of the influence exercised by occult organizations on the destinies of mankind is to be found in the history of the Holy Alliance, founded in 1815 by Alexander I, Emperor of Russia. This was originally a union of monarchs pledged to support the Christian Church and to stem the rising tide of radicalism, revolution, and subversion. The Historia de la Magie, Eliphas Levi, states that the Spiritist sect of the rescuers of Louis the 16th, wishing to penetrate this organization to use it for their own purposes, succeeded in insinuating one of their illumines into the good graces of the Tsar. This was Madame Bouche, known to the adepts as Sister Salome. After 18 months spent at the Russian court, during which she had many secret interviews with the emperor, she was supplanted by another medium, somnambulist of the sect, the famous Madame de Krudner, who acquired so great an influence over the Tsar that his ministers became alarmed at the situation thus created. Levi thus describes the fall of the favorite. One day, as the emperor was leaving her, she barred his passage, crying, "God reveals to me that your life is in great danger. An assassin is in the palace." The emperor, alarmed, caused the palace to be searched, and a man armed with a dagger was found. He confessed. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Luna. One day, I'm sorry. Now I got confused here. He confessed when questioned that he had been introduced into the palace by Madame de Krudner herself. One wonders if the whole affair was not simply the result of a clever intrigue calculated to get rid of the prophetess. As such, it was singularly successful, for Madame de Krudner was summarily banished from the Russian court. In De la Marconnière Occulte, J.M. Ragon tells us that science counts 4 kinds of somnambulism: the natural, the symptomatic, and the magnetic, and the ecstatic. Natural and symptomatic somnambulism are 2 essentially different states, one occurring only at night and the other by day as well as by night. The conduct of the subject is different under the 2 conditions. Hi Luna. I hope the sound is good. I've been recording this, so I hope the sound is good. I can't type or anything. So let me continue. I'm reading a really long book. So where did I leave off? Natural and symptomatic somnambulism are 2 essentially different states, one occurring only at night, the other by day as well as by night. The conduct of the subject is different under 2 conditions. magnetic and ecstatic somnambulism differ from one another in so much as the one is commanded, willed, and the other is not. The first is artificial, the other natural. In the first, the subject is dependent, and in the second, he acts independently. That is why induced somnambulism cures the natural when substituted for it. A lucid somnambulist bears no more resemblance to a man asleep than he does to an active man awake. When the Gnostics practiced magic, they evoked the spirits of the dead exactly as do the occultists of today. Dawning Christianity was prolific in miracles, so, in order to fight it, the disciples of Gnosticism had recourse to diabolical marvels. In this respect, are not contemporaneous spiritists, with their rapping tables and apparitions, Gnostics under another name? Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad the sound is going good. Secret Gnostic meetings led to depravity, as the adepts indulge in every kind of turpitude and obscenity, often under the influence of drugs such as Indian hemp, cannabis, or opium, the medicinal properties of which, when administered under certain conditions, are provocative of mediumistic phenomena. It's not all bad, under certain conditions and dosed right. Thus debauched, their moral sense weakened, initiates are ready to work. They work, they fall, and as they fall, the occult power grasps its prey. Their life henceforth is subject to the will of the hidden masters, who, according to their secret designs, will lead their slaves to power, or a semblance of power, or else to their downfall. To use the words of Inquire Within in Light Bearers of Darkness, page 118, these masters, doubtless identical with the terrible power behind the horrors of Russia's sufferings and the world revolution, have in reality no interest in soul or astral development, except as a means of forming passive, illuminized tools completely controlled in mind and actions. Inquire Within further suggests that there is a group of flesh and blood men who can form etheric links from any distance with the leaders of these societies, and who secretly work by means of that light which can slay or make alive, intoxicating, blinding, and, if need be, destroying unwary men and women, using them as instruments or light bearers to bring to pass this mad and evil scheme of world dominion by the God people, the Kabbalistic Jew. A further explanation of the phenomenon of induced mediumship is given us by the same author, who quotes the following lines from Eliphas Levi's History of Magic. This may take place when, through a series of almost impossible exercises, our nervous system, having been habituated to all tensions and fatigues, has become a kind of living galvanic pile, capable of condensing and projecting powerfully that light, astral, in quotes, which intoxicates and destroys. Inquire Within comments further, in attempts to show that it leads to mastership and self-control, but on careful consideration it provides to be merely conscious mediumship, inspired by crafty and willful deception, giving the adept a false confidence, inducing him to let go his physical senses and work upon the astral, where, enclosed by formulae given by these masters themselves, he is completely at their mercy. A recent practical illustration of these methods is a teaching contained in a book called Asia Mysteriosa by Zam Botiva, published by Dorben Ain, which suggests ways and means of communication with the hidden masters. It will be recognized by anyone having taken an interest in the progress of science along certain lines that there is nothing impossible or even improbable in the suggestion that telepathy may be exploited by organizations for their own particular ends. 40 years ago, William Gay Hudson wrote on telepathy as follows: If the power exists in man to convey a telepathic message to his fellow man, it presupposes the existence of the power in the percipient to repeat the message to a third person, and so on indefinitely, until someone receives it who has the power to elevate the information above the threshold of his consciousness, and thus convey it to the objective intelligence of the world. Nor is the element of time necessarily an adverse factor in the case, for there is no reason to suppose that such messages may not be transmitted from one to another for generations. Thus the particulars of a tragedy might be revealed many years after the event, and in such a way as to render it difficult, if not impossible, to trace the line through which the intelligence was transmitted. For the spiritist, the easy and ever-ready explanation of such a phenomenon is to ascribe it to the intervention of spirits of the dead. But to those who have kept pace with the developments of modern scientific investigation, and who are able to draw the legitimate necessary conclusions from the facts discovered, the explanation is obvious, without the necessity of entering the domain of the supernatural. Oh, let me take a drink. On the subject of hypnotism and crime, Hudson, writing further, reaches, however, a fatally false conclusion, which for many years remained unchallenged. He states, "It is true that on ordinary questions the truth is always uppermost in the subjective mind. A hypnotic subject will often say during the hypnotic sleep that which he would not say in his waking moments. Nevertheless, he never betrays a vital secret. That this is true is presumptively proved by the fact that in all the years during which the science of hypnotism has been practiced, no one has ever known to betray the secrets of any society or order. The attempt has often been made, but it has never succeeded." Hudson attributes this reticence to auto-suggestion, opposing the suggestion of another. This, however, is not the case, for where a member of a secret society or order is concerned, that member was already hypnotized during initiation, and it is not his will that guards the secret. It is the will of another, the will of the lodge. How many people know that hypnotism is about all there is to initiation, hypnotism and fear. The rest is camouflage. In the event of this statement being doubted, we quote herewith from Freemasonry Universal, an article which needs no further comment. The stewards prepare the candidate, the Tyler first, and afterwards in turn, the IG, deacons and junior wardens should inspect the candidate to see that everything is strictly correct. The preparation symbolizes poverty, blindness, or ignorance, and poverty of spirit. But it may also signify a purification, such as meaning, that the riches and pleasures which bind one to the material side of life are discarded and the spirit blinded to their attractions. The bearing of the right arm, the left breast, left knee, and right heel being slipshod are apparently a reference to the awakening of occult centers in one's being, which may only become active when purification of the whole nature has begun. The very specific character of the preparation points to real knowledge of the occult physiology of the process of initiation on the part of those originated, the method of which has been so faithfully preserved. Certain forces are sent through the candidate's body during the ceremony, especially at the moment when he is created, received, and constituted and entered apprentice Freemason. Certain parts of the lodge have been very heavily charged with magnetic force, especially in order that the candidate may absorb as much as possible of this force. The subject of this curious method of preparation is to expose to this influence those various parts of the body which are especially used in the ceremony. In ancient Egypt, there was another reason for those preparations, For a weak current of physical electricity was sent through the candidate by means of a rod or sword with which he was touched at certain points. It is partly on this account that at this first initiation the candidate is deprived of all metals, since they may very easily interfere with the flow of the currents. Oh, how interesting. All kinds of nice, inspiring, symbolical interpretations of the ritual are generally given for the benefit of people who seem to want them, but it is here evident that the candidate, unknown to himself or herself, has acted throughout the ceremony of initiation under stress of hypnotism. No longer a free agent, the initiate takes the oath under hypnotic force, which has been used to instill into him the feeling of fear. Fear guards the secret of initiation, fear born under the power of hypnotism, to serve henceforth as the controlling agent of the initiators over initiated. The right worshipful master must be a genuine occultist, as it is up to him to charge, in quotations, hypnotize, the candidate, for to give this, in the words of Freemasonry Universal, the RWM gives the light, the pure white light of truth and illumination. Illumination alias Kundalini, alias serpent power, alias electromagnetic force, alias the sex force, etc. Even in our Western world, anyone wishing to study Hatha Yoga can learn to neutralize the action of gravity and go some yards up in the air. This stunt and the assumption of any size at will are tricks for which training is essential, and if one works at it hard enough, one will eventually be able to mesmerize people for one's own purposes, business, political, or other, thus following the lure of the occult to a sinister and black magic. We would here observe that the miracles performed by Jesus Christ bore a distinctive feature, often overlooked, namely that in every case altruism was the source of their inspiration. Thus they were a symbol of charity. This gives us the esoteric explanation of his silence when taunted on the cross. He saved others. Himself he cannot save. Sooner than use this power for personal advantage, he chose death. Gnostic miracles, such as that of being buried alive for a period of time, which constitutes the Hindi religious rites of samadhi, have no ulterior charitable purpose. They are chiefly performed for the object of creating wonderment, curiosity, or faith in magic, and as such, failing the altruistic motive, are classifiable under the general term of black magic. As a stimulus to popular faith, they are, however, sanctioned by most pagan religions. Though where such a custom prevails, the magical performers themselves are not privileged to withhold their gains for themselves, as these are claimed by the temple. Having dealt with the preliminaries of the subject, we will now proceed along the thorny paths of history, not the history of wars, battles, and heroes. My computer has given up. I hope the stream is still up. I had to turn on my cooler. Yeah, it's lagging. I see it lagging. Darn it. I will probably stop the stream in a minute because we're on chapter 3. I read about 40 pages. We only got another, 770 to go. So let me see here. Let me see if I can redo my. I don't know if I'm still streaming. I guess it's still streaming. Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'm gonna call it a day. It was kind of fun. I mean, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll try to. Next time, I think I'll try to record it and just play it so I can chat during the reading. So, anyway, I want to thank Luna for following, and I will read again some other time.
Of intuition, is it insecurity? You know I can read your mind and you have been deceiving me. Which face wears the mask this evening? When will your true colors show? Will they be as black as shadows hiding neath the rainbow? Just who